Can't wait to talk to him. Joining us right now, Luke Rosiak. Luke Rosiak, of course, doing incredible work at the Daily Wire. And he's got a couple of news stories here focusing on the shenanigans of Democrats in Northern Virginia. Luke, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So your great coverage of the Loudoun County School Board and county supervisors, obviously, we talk about quite a bit, but now we've got a fascinating story coming out of Fairfax. This has to do with a current member of the Fairfax County School Board who is now running for the state Senate. And her opponent, by the way, happens to be a history teacher at a Fairfax County high school. So technically, this school board member has some level of influence over her opponent's career. And boy, it sure seems like she inappropriately wielded that influence.
Yeah, Stella Pekarsky is Fairfax County School Board member. Julie Perry is a conservative teacher. They both want to be the next state senator for Western Fairfax. And basically, Pekarsky, basically there's a donor to Stella Pekarsky called in a CPS complaint against Perry, like a child protective service complaint, something that could get her kids, her basically make it so she couldn't teach, could potentially even go to prison. That CPS complaint was promptly dismissed, as you would expect. So once that happens, a second Pekarsky ally files a complaint directly to the school asking them to take action. And this is a complaint expressing concern over basically her political speech, saying, her conservative opinions are homophobic. So that comes in at 3:14 p.m., that complaint on May 11th. 45 minutes, the principal forwards it to the assistant superintendent, a lady named Penny Gros. Penny Gros says, let me get some guidance on this, and I'll get back to you about how to proceed. So just minutes later, she gets on the phone with Stella Pekarsky, Julie Perry's campaign opponent. And her calendar shows a call with Pekarsky, read Julie Perry from 4 to 4:30. At 4:29, she gets back to the principal and says, all right, I'm ready to talk. And next thing you know, they send a letter threatening to fire Julie Perry.
That's horrible, Luke. I mean, this is just incredible, the dirty tricks that are being used and the fact that, someone who's holding public office would utilize her official position and power and influence to then try to undermine the candidacy of her opponent. Is there a conflict of interest here? I mean, is there some sort of policy for school board members about conflicts of interest, that should preclude this from even happening?
Yeah, Fairfax County, the school board members don't have any individual power. Their power comes from voting. When all 12 of them get together and they have an official vote in an open meeting, that's where they have power. But as an individual, they don't have any power. And it's a really big district. The school board members are kind of like way higher up than just a personnel matter. You would actually have to appeal something like this 6 times before it would reach the level of the school board. So it's totally bizarre. Experts are telling me it's totally inappropriate for a school board member to be involved in just sort of on an ad hoc basis in the discipline case of an individual school teacher. And that's even taking out of it the idea that this is her campaign opponent. And they said when you add in the fact that it's her campaign opponent, I mean, it just seems like it's election interference. Yeah. It violates quite a number of policies and potentially even laws. And, they're saying probably, the school, the complainants may have coordinated. There's, Robert Rigby is a donor to Stella Pekarsky. I've got a picture in the story in the Daily Wire of her hugging this guy, Robert Rigby. He's the one who filed the CPS complaint, and she's saying she didn't know about it. But then, it gets into the question of, well, what did they talk about on that phone call if she didn't know about the CPS complaint?
That's right. And so it's her buddy and donor makes a complaint about this teacher who happens to be the Republican nominee for the same race that she's running in. Then she has a specific phone call with the assistant superintendent of schools about this, which is the kind of micromanaging that you shouldn't see from a school board member. If she thinks it's an issue with this teacher, she can bring it up at the school board meeting, and then as a body, they can decide to do something about it. But of course, that would be inappropriate. So instead, they do it secretly on this phone call. You only happen to learn about it because of a FOIA request. So I guess, Mike, we had the chairman, Steve Knox, of the Fairfax County Republican Party. We talked about it earlier in the program, Luke, and he said, listen, this is Fairfax County. She's a Democrat. She's already a sitting school board member. If she's doing stuff like this only tells you that they're actually quite concerned right now about this election coming up. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that's one take. I mean, it sounds right. We'll see if there are any consequences for this. The Fairfax County Public Schools tried to conceal the names of the two complainants from me. So and that kind of would prevent me from seeing that these are Pekarsky donors and close allies. And actually, the guy that filed the CPS complaint, he donated to Pekarsky the day before the principal summoned in Perry to threaten her with firing over this guy's complaint. And what they did is they said, you can be fired for bringing the school system into, quote, disrepute. And the evidence that you brought it into disrepute is that two people were upset by your comments. And they didn't say that those two people were the close allies of your election opponent.
Yeah.
It's Luke, it's disgusting what they're doing. How did you guys get this story? Where did this come from? Because I can imagine that these types of shenanigans go on in other places, and it's important for folks to know that they have an ally. There's somebody in the news who's willing to run with this story, because unfortunately we're not going to see it on the Washington Post or anywhere else, but you guys are covering it, and it's so important that folks know that there's an avenue they can go to when they smell stinky stuff like this going on.
Yeah, the Daily Wire is building an investigative team. I've been an investigative reporter there for a couple of years, and we're hiring a few new people now, so we're really beefing up. And, Julie Perry hired a lawyer who's actually another Senate Republican candidate named Hayden Fisher. He's running for a different state Senate seat. And he realized, because they wouldn't tell him, they told Perry that someone filed a CPS complaint against her, but they wouldn't tell her who. And he realized that under the law, if you file a malicious complaint, that person can be unmasked. So he went to court, and even in Fairfax County, a judge said, yeah, that may have been malicious. Let me look into that. And if so, we're going to unmask them. But that, early voting starts today. So that wasn't going to happen until probably after the election. So I did a FOIA request, and I got the names. They were trying to withhold them. But I was kind of able to piece it together anyway and, find out that it's a donor. So, that's really the question here is if this is election interference and they did this, is anything going to happen to them, or is it kind of like they're the ones in charge so they can just kind of get away with it, even if it violates all kinds of policies? But it's definitely a story that's just come straight from government documents. So it'll be interesting to see whether other media outlets pick it up, because it's kind of a clear-cut election story that I think is of public interest.
That's right. It's Fairfax County is basically one-party rule, and when you've got one-party rule and the arrogance that goes along with it, you think you can do stuff like this without any accountability, and that's where the press is supposed to come in. Luke Rosiak, Daily Wire, I'm glad that you're doing your fair bit. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks for having me.
It's 8:15, WMAL Traffic.